Today we are going to be in conversation with David O'Brien. David's an actuary by profession and runs a debt counselling firm. Welcome, David.
Thanks very much, Dalton. Good to be here.
David, debt counselling and that big word debt. What is debt counselling all about?
Sure. As you said, debt's a big word and counselling is a big thing. So debt counselling is actually pretty unique globally in terms of that it was legislated as part of the National Credit Act. So other countries have voluntary programs to help people with their debt, but South Africa is blessed to have a regulated program. So I myself am a registered debt counsellor, same regulator as the banks, so ABSA, etc. And our job is to help people who are over-indebted. Now, over-indebted is a very specific phrase. If you apply for a loan, the banks ask you for income and expenses, and generally for most people that ends up with a positive number so that you can then apply for the loan and afford to repay it. But for debt counselling clients, we end up with a negative number. So after their income and their expenses, they end up with a shortfall after they're paying their debt. And those are the people that we then name to help.
I remember when we chatted earlier, you spoke about taking people through a program. Do you have some success stories that you can maybe share with us on that?
Yeah, look, it's actually life-changing for the people who go through the program. So like I said, we start with that assessment. If the client is over-indebted, so genuinely hasn't got enough money to meet their obligations, then we have a mandate to renegotiate their repayments with the bank. And in fact, I was talking to a young lady the other day. She's a young professional. She earns 50,000 rands a month, which is a pretty decent salary in today's economy, and she's over-indebted. Now, the impact we can have in her life is her debt repayments were 17,300 a month. Once she's on the program, that drops to 10,000. So that's nearly a 45% reduction in her outgoings on her debts. And at the same time, we managed to negotiate reduced interest rates. So not only is she paying less each month, but she will pay less in total to be debt-free. And debt-free is then the critical outcome.
And so how long is this program? How long will that take?
It depends case to case. We generally aim for a period of about 5 years. But a lot of people, even if we start them on a 5-year program, they're often out by 3.5, 4 years because they pay in a little bit extra or they get a bonus to settle some of the loans.
So I want to talk like nuts and bolts, how that program actually looks. So I'm in debt, I then come to you. Do you sit with me and take me through this whole process? Yeah. Is there a fixed amount now that I'm forced to pay? And I cannot take on more credit.
Yeah. So the counselling element is important.
Okay, that's where the counselling comes in.
We deal with each client on an individual basis. Yeah. And then the process is, as you say, you start with their payslip, which is obvious, but then work through a budget. What is a decent household budget? What can they afford? School fees, housekeeper, rent, rates, the whole lot. And then at the bottom, we get to that affordability number. Okay. Now, when we do our work, at the end of that budget is your affordability for all of your debt. So let's say in the case of the young lady, it was 10,000 rands. We then go to your credit providers, as we call them, but your banks, your lending houses, and we say to them, listen, Dalton has 10,000 rands for all of his debts. We are going to offer you 1,000 for 5 years. Are you okay with that? So on your behalf as your debt counsellor, we then deal with each of those banks separately. And then we aim to get them all to come to the party for that single payment of 10,000.
Sure, amazing. If you come out the program, what's the next step for them? So you've obviously freed up some cash flow, you've dealt with your debt. What's the next step?
So as you said, the important point of the program is you cannot take on further debt when you're in the program, which means by definition, when you're finished repaying what you have, you come out debt-free. So then for the personal perspective, and in fact, I'll keep using this young lady again, she wants to buy a house. So today, her credit score is okay. She's a little bit overburdened, but she can't afford a house. So when we have her cleared through the debt counselling program, she will have affordability, 10 grand a month, and she can now take that and apply that to a bond repayment. So for her, she'll be debt-free at the program, she'll be credit-worthy, and she'll have affordability.
That's powerful stuff. I'm just thinking about the mental aspect, the impact of debt on the family as a whole, the drain on your mental health. I mean, could you talk about that? Yeah.
So we're actually partnering with a major benefits consultancy in South Africa.
Okay.
And through them, we've had exposure to some of their research around how debt can impact employees in the workplace. So one area is a thing that they call presenteeism, where your employee is there, he's sitting in the chair, he looks like he's doing his work, but actually he's stressing about his debt. So he's present, but not present. And these guys reckon from their research that you're talking up to 6 hours a week lost. That's nearly a day a week lost by the average employee purely from their financial circumstances. Now, obviously, in South Africa, that could be even bigger given so many people are in debt. That would be in the context of, let's say, an office workplace. But if you talk about a manufacturing facility or a transport facility where you could have people moving heavy equipment, then actually you need to look at the safety implications. Sure. That somebody who's stressed and burdened by their debt could actually be more likely to have accidents in the workplace. So it's got a bigger impact other than just their pocket.
Yeah.
Definitely an all-embracing thing.
It's fascinating. I want to shift to from an employer perspective. What sort of plans could you put in place? I've got a company, I've got 100 people working with me. As opposed to dealing with them individually, I'm sure you can do that. But to educate the staff, what sort of plans or tactical plans can you put in place for the company?
So for us, the education starts with the credit report. So each individual employee, we can offer a credit report that can help them. That's obviously a little cold. Credit report is quite a complicated document for the average guy. So what we have done with some of our corporate clients is we come on site and do presentations. We can do it to the whole workforce, depending on office availability, if you will. But we found that actually, particularly in office scenarios or service environments, we do training programs for the team leaders, for the managers, so that then they themselves are better placed to have the conversation with the team member. And then, because obviously debt's a confidential thing, a lot of staff members not keen to go, hey boss, I've got a problem with money.
I'm going to attend a workshop on debt counseling.
Well, the workshop is fine because often it's compulsory, but to actually stand up and say, listen, I have a problem. To be honest, debt, in fact, in the UK, there's an organization called Debtors Anonymous, because it's a bit like Alcoholics Anonymous, that actually, it's almost a stigma, and the first step in the process is to acknowledge you have a problem. But to come back to the workplace context, a lot of guys are not comfortable sharing it with their employer. So what we have done is we will come to a work site, we will take a room that's closed off with curtains, and then the employees can come in during the lunch break, close the door, it's secure, it's confidential, nobody knows. We have also done work site visits where we'll set up a little table with our sign, again, close to the canteen. The guys come down at lunchtime, we tell them a little bit what they do, we explain how the employer is supporting them. Obviously, from an employer perspective, the employee knows that their well-being is important to the employer. And then from there, depending if it's just information, tell me a little bit about debt, or all the way through to a full counseling process, which we generally will do on the phone. So it's done confidentially, so the employee can talk to us in their own time. And then in terms of employer feedback, we'll often say, we did an engagement last week, we trained 20 of your managers, and actually subsequently 2 have joined on the program. So we tend to give high-level statistics because often the employers also don't want to go too deep into the personal stuff.
Yeah. You know what, I was speaking to a financial planner recently, and he was saying that when we think about debt, we think about somebody earning a lower income, but we're finding more and more professionals, like you mentioned the lady, earning in excess of 50 in a seriously bad debt situation.
It's a bit of a misunderstanding or a misnomer, if you will, that people think, debt's a poor person's problem.
Yeah.
You can get as much debt as your salary will support. So debt problems are proportional to your salary. So you can be over indebted. I've got one customer who earns $350,000 a month, and they are over indebted because actually they have taken all the debt that will support and more. So yes, they have bigger debts than my average client, but they are over indebted. Now, if we bring it back to the employer, the workplace, what this means, I have plenty of clients in my company who are middle manager employees in large organizations, middle manager, senior manager, and they were on the brink of resigning from the company to access their pension fund to settle their debt. Now, so we offer an alternative to that. So again, from the employer's perspective, you don't want to lose a manager with 20 years experience and they're afraid to tell you why they're leaving. They just go, I'm resigning for a better job. Actually, they're leaving to get to the fund. We offer an alternative, and the outcome is the client gets to keep his pension fund, and more importantly, the employer gets to keep the senior manager on the payroll, and now they are more present at work because their debts are being addressed. I even have a story where someone fabricated their divorce, because again, if you get divorced from your spouse, you can access your pension fund. They fabricated their divorce and paid half their pension fund to their wife, who then used it to settle debt, and guess what? After the divorce, they made up and they continued living together. So that's how crazy, how far people will go. And yet debt counseling is available. It's a paper process, and immediately you're saved from day one.
Yeah, I think it's so evident that that's huge impacts on so many other aspects of your life. And we've got to get a hold, and I think companies need to really focus on that. But it's difficult because not people don't want to be forthcoming about their debt situation.
Yeah, so again, in terms of the confidentiality, one of the other services we offer is we have an app. I mentioned earlier that the credit report is difficult to understand. So what we've done is, as an individual, and we can offer this via the employer, they can publicize it through emails, but the individual employee in their own time and in their confidential space can register on the system. They can then access a credit report, but more importantly, we show them a summary, so the key items, and we show them a budget, and we show them their debt in an easy to access graphical format. And the reason we're doing that is to hopefully just to help them get a better understanding of what the source of the problem is. That doesn't mean they're over indebted, but now they understand where their debt sits.
Fascinating. David, this is such a weighty topic, but is there final words that you can, just for our employers out there, just to encourage them to really treat it seriously? Because I think there's benefits for the employees in the long run.
I think for the average employer, everybody is facing that presenteeism cost. If one of your employees is going to resign to access their pension fund, then you've got staff turnover, which is a real bugbear for an employer. If you have a business that's handling cash, a shop, a casino, a supermarket, anyone who's over indebted is a higher fraud or credit risk in your team. So you definitely want to be thinking about how those guys are dealing with it. But just generally, to have a happier, more confident employee who's not looking to you for a payday loan 3 weeks before payday because they need transport costs. All of those use cases, senior and junior, can benefit from debt counseling. And if it's done correctly in a confidential fashion, as an employer, you can add a hell of a lot of value to those employees.
Thanks for that, David. I think something that stood out for me today is that we can really change somebody's life by dealing with debt. It's a serious topic. So thank you for educating us today, and we look forward to working with you and to seeing what we can do for employers and employees. To our audience out there, just another reminder that we are relational and not transactional, and we look forward to working with you.